Hello, I'm back with some more bird synthesis. Today I'm going to be working on a common wood pigeon sound. Here's the reference sample I'm going to use, which is something I recorded a while ago. A wood pigeon is a very common bird here in the UK, and it's not to be confused with a feral pigeon, which makes more of a grumbling sound and is found more in urban areas. Let's load up the synth. In this case, there's only really one harmonic we'll need to be adding, so we can get away with using an analog oscillator. I'll set it to sine so that it doesn't have any additional partials. We'll want to find the lowest frequency that the bird calls at, which is around about in line with this 300 Hz mark. Then we should set the harmonic scale of the oscillator to 0, and type in 300 Hz. Now any note I play on a keyboard will be 300 Hz sine wave. Then we want to learn what frequency the bird's song rises to, which is roughly about here. So let's say that's 700 Hz. Then we'll add a curve and we'll set it to modulate the shift, and we'll right click here. Then this little box here, we'll type in 700 Hz. Now if we play a key, it goes from 700 Hz to 300 Hz. I consider there to be 5 primary notes in the sequence, which then repeat. So we'll try to replicate this set of 5 notes in phase plant. The length of this sequence is roughly 2.5 seconds. So we can set our curve to last that long. Then we can start drawing a curve which matches these curves here. So now this vaguely resembles the bird, but it's kind of holding on to the low note after each note. So we can also assign the same curve to control the level of the oscillator. So let's set the level to 0, then click this plus, and then right click the level and type in 100%. We can also right click this circle here. We can drag this upwards, and then any time that there's a note, so any time this curve isn't right at the bottom, the level will be quite consistent and quite high. We can also use a slew limiter to make it so that this curve won't drop to 0 so sharply. We'll click the plus and then assign it to modulate the slew limiter. And then we'll replace this shift modulation with one coming from the slew limiter. Then let's try it with a longer decay. We can also use the slew limiter to affect the modulation of the level. As before, we'll need to remove the connection to the level, then assign the curve to this slew limiter, and then we'll assign this back to the level. Now I think I'll do some editing to taste. I'm going to start by adding an LFO, and I'll assign this to the level of the analog. We'll go downward, and then I'll make this LFO very fast. This just adds a bit of volume variation, which I think makes it sound a bit more natural. We could even assign our first curve to control the depth of this LFO. And maybe the speed as well. So here's it without the LFO. And with. I'll add a bit of reverb. What we could do now is make it so the sound can loop. So we'll do that by editing this curve. So go down here, then I'd set it to sustain. There's not enough gap between the two phrases, so let's edit the curve. Now we can hold it down. But we can also stop it mid-cycle, which isn't very good. To account for this, I'm going to change the envelope to a curve, set it to something fairly consistent, and make it nice and long. I'm also going to add a slight fade in at the start. I've set the curve to be 20 seconds long. This means the pigeon's unlikely to stop mid-phrase unless we've left it held down for a very long time. And we can add a bit of randomness if we want. Let's start by adding a random modulator. I'm going to set it to 0 Hertz. I'm going to assign the main curve to the trigger of this random. I think I'm going to assign this to this shift. I'm also going to try assigning this to the length of the curve. This means that every time one of these notes plays, it will slightly randomize the pitch and also the speed that this is played at. And there we have a sound resembling a wood pigeon.